With the massive success of Solo Leveling and the jump it got again from the anime, many series have taken that road. The only issue is that many of them are bad, or at least fail to provide anything worth keeping you around after the 30 chapter mark. It also doesn't help that much like isekai and manga, blends of action, isekai, and fantasy elements have become the most oversaturated market, which makes the search for gold feel like I missed 1848. I once said that if there was a layer of hell specifically designed for me, it would be an eternity of reading isekai video game fantasy series that all consist of the same core appeal. But here are some webtoon series that I think are actually worth your time. And one of my recommendations ever failed, don't answer that. Do you know what has killed humans the most? Is it the mighty lion, the venomous snake, or other humans in our countless wars throughout time? None of them. It is the mosquito, and they have been waiting. These demonic creatures have been waiting for the chance to become the apex predators of the earth. A special group is trained to gather research that can save humanity from the swarm of blood and death that has brought the proud human race to its knees. Mosquito Wars. This is done by the same artist as the boxer in Horizon, who's without a doubt one of the GOATs. Takes advantage of the vertical reading layout, leading to visuals that on their own make whatever they make memorable. If you read The Boxer, you know the action is going to be top tier in every single chapter. Add on top of that a story that from the jump makes how dire the situation is clear, but the nature of the mosquito is rather odd compared to what you would expect from the bringers of humanity's doom. It is almost impossible not to get hooked. How dire is the situation, you might ask? The total number of human survivors, 5,162. Total number of mosquitoes, 1.5 trillion. I'll get what is most likely the most popular of all the recs in this video out of the way. Omniscient Reader follows Doka Jim, who's the only fan of a web series titled 3 Ways to Survive the Apocalypse. It has over 3,000 chapters, although having only one fan after 3,000 chapters sounds like a title on a desperate manga channel. Don't forget who pays you here. It took him 10 years to complete, but that series is a prophecy of exactly how the world will end, and he knows the whole thing. On the train, the story begins to unfold in front of him as a little creature gives people a video game quest. Kill a living organism in 10 minutes. Win, you get 300 coins. Lose, and the punishment is death. The main character, due to his prior knowledge and also because he is the main character, is able to come up with a quick solution for himself and save some of the people he will need to continue and survive this apocalypse. The people he meets are characters in the story he read that he knows the ins and out of and will need to move like chess pieces in order to change the future. But not everything unfolds just as he had read, which keeps things interesting at vital points. My main concern while reading this is whether or not it would follow the trajectory many manhwa and manga of this type of genre do, unfortunately. A really strong start, and then they go full Ben Simmons. In other words, they fall off a cliff. This pleasantly wasn't the case at all with Omniscient Reader. It managed to excel on its tense start and build the mystery behind it all more and more. The main character, despite a pretty stark change in personality just within the first chapter, was also compelling, giving the moral dilemma characters that know the future fall into. Elements being thrown into the pot that keeps you engaged from start to finish, or well, up to the point the story is at, as you piece things together and watch how the main character deals with the objective at hand. I don't think this counts as isekai. I think the actual term is reverse isekai, but if it has a leveling up system, it sits at the dinner table. It is ongoing at 236 chapters on Webtoon, so go crazy. I have a buddy of mine who's trying to put me onto this for months, so consider this my apology for not listening. In the age of vampires, they rule supreme, crushing humanity under their boot and wiping the race from existence. A normal human cannot withstand their sheer speed and power, and we as a race are running out of options. The greatest gladiator with 228 fights and 228 wins stood dying on his feet, and he was brought back to life. Corpse Knight Gunther. This is one of the coolest things I've had the pleasure of reading. Just look at this suit of armor. In order to ensure it stays interesting and Gunther isn't just steamrolling everything, therefore the series just lose all possible interest and stakes, he has a timer of 2 hours, and he can be active for until dying again, and then needing to be recharged via his human battery. I love the setting. Its blend of horror and action makes it a read that stands out in a niche packed with action series. I mean, let's be honest with each other. Would you rather read this series or another one with a dark-haired bowl-cut MC? The peeks we get into Gunther's past helps build the story of interest to him as a character, a lesson in slowly showing the intrigue of your series instead of giving it all away in chapter 1. Some series have great stories and others have great art, but this has both. Circles within circles within circles. An angel falls from the sky and wakes up inside of the home of Goatman, with no memory of how she got there. Hell is a fantasy series on Webtoon Canvas, following the Angel 9, and she's trying to find her way back home, with the help of Baal, a demon who was once a violent warrior, but for some reason sees no point in the endless war that has gone on between his people and hers. the eternal battle between angels and demons. Please give this a try. I loved how the story takes its time to introduce all of the different elements and immerse you in its vision of hell and its inhabitants. Instead of starting off with the first chapter that tells you everything with a monologue, it throws you into it and tells you to piece it together, like Nine the Angel is trying to do as well. Each chapter you read brings you closer to the answers you want, and once you get those answers, more questions replace them, making you feel like you're always learning something new about the characters, the world, and the lore. I think anyone who's a fan of hell settings or anything that has a strong world building focus like Made in Abyss would love this. What I wasn't expecting is this story to then focus on a completely different character, exploring different stories, building the world through the eyes of more than just one person. This somehow only has 124,000 reads total when it deserves so much more. I'm using the excuse of Nine falling into what she thought was a new world at first as an excuse to recommend this. Look, I needed something simple for the title, but seriously, dope characters, dope world building, creative execution. I think the one thing it's missing for me is a major antagonist that sticks with me, but that might be the Bondrewd fan in me being biased. This is adapted from a web novel, so I can't speak to how faithful of an adaptation it is, but The Primal Hunter was a pleasant surprise. Follows Jake, a man tired of his boring job and mundane life, thrown into a tutorial where only the strongest will survive in the wild. It's always funny to me seeing characters complain about job security. I'd like for them to talk to the genius majoring in art or computer science right now. Him and his co-workers split up when a faction of them takes them in, and then he decides to go off on his own to ensure the survival of said co-workers, setting off a tense survival adventure. I really like this so far. The main character feels layered with the possibility to go in many different directions. I was worried once he unlocked his unique ability, something on the checklist of every isekai MC, that it would lose me quickly. But it never lost its feeling of stakes and risks, hence, again, survival. Like, you can't list yourself a survival series and not have survival. It's not just the main character. Thankfully, there are other characters who also feel active and growing, and not just people that exist to fill certain roles. The survival aspect isn't ruined every 5 seconds by cheap rehashes of comedy, taking away from any sense of danger, and it does a good job of ending off with a cliffhanger each chapter to keep momentum of the read going. It feels like the isekai elements of the premise isn't a weak pillar holding the whole thing up. It takes a backseat to the main character, one that I'm actually interested in and where he will end up as the story goes on, along with strong moments of foreshadowing. If there are two things that do bother me at times, even though I complimented it for not having too much comedy, the dialogue. The main character will encounter beings of immense power and they speak so casually. Imagine speaking to a being of immortality that's lived for God knows how long and he goes, "What's up, homie?" It just takes me out of the moment a bit, and I also think the art is a bit safe. I understand it's an adaptation, so if it's being faithful, then okay, but a series with such intensity, I think having an art style that would then match that intensity and tone would be very appreciated. Despite those two complaints, I definitely think this is worth your time. Hardcore Leveling Warrior, I read a few years ago, and I felt like a refresher was in order since you always run the gamble of things being much better in your memory. It's always nice when it brings you the same excitement and awe as before. Hardcore Leveling Warrior is a lesson in why treating others nicely and not making too many enemies is vital. The main character clearly missed the memo. He is the strongest in this game world where your currency can translate into real money. But since he's unstoppable, he doesn't have to worry about paying his debts in-game. Wouldn't that be dope if you could get out of taxes by boxing an IRS agent? Sorry, intrusive thoughts. The time comes where he is then jumped, and a mysterious person takes everything he has, forcing him to start from the beginning. Lucky for him, someone with a lot of money needs his expertise and can help him paying off his debts, as well as there's somebody else who's like super strong and just has a crush on the person for some reason, as well as his game knowledge actually helps him survive through a lot of this stuff. Of course, the premise, the characters, and action matter, but if your series isn't depending on a super complicated plot and top-tier mystery, then please do something visually that makes it feel like I'm not reading the same thing over and over again. And Hardcore Leveling does that. I love the art and the designs, which translates into the action and expression of the characters. You don't understand how many times I've read through a manga or manhwa and I thought, wow, this scene would be so much better if the characters would just shut the fuck up. Now, to be completely transparent, it's not as artistically ambitious as, say, Helper or Beetle Hands, which is another really underrated horror recommendation, by the way, but it's a massive step in the right direction. I also think the story did a good job of making the main character dislikable enough to make it satisfying. He got what he deserved in the beginning, but not to the point where I don't care for his growth and interaction with the other characters. It's really satisfying to see how he changes with the group that he's a part of, and I have to employ elements of strategy and not just purely overpowering everything he runs into. From isekai back to fantasy and action, I would like to present Ghoul. Why in the name of my glorious king Brock Bowers did I not hear about this? I don't know. It isn't the most obscure thing by any means, but for something this awesome in terms of art and action, I'm surprised I haven't been spam recommended in each of my videos. Best way to recommend me something, by the way. I'm not joking. The amount of videos I've made because people have been recommending a series for like 100+ days. Shout out to all of you. Ghoul is a little orc from a village who loves mountain climbing, but up in his hideout he gets knocked down a cliff and helps a dark elf being hunted by 2 demons. This takes them back to the village where then the 2 strongest orcs fend off the demon general and kill the vice general. And off the bat, I must say this has some of the best action I have ever seen. Impact and weight is felt with every panel, and some of the best usage of perspective I've seen in any action manhwa or manga. Ghoul has to accompany the elf back, and a larger danger is building up, potentially bringing about another war like the one that took place many years ago. Ghoul himself is full of energy and potential, but he's also incredibly dumb, which, as you can guess, gets him into a lot of unfortunate circumstances. But it keeps the series fun and entertaining during its more downtime moments. Good luck finding a more fun action series. It isn't the most complicated, it isn't the most convoluted thing ever, it's just a lot of fun, and I think you should read it. If you like Parasite the Maxim, Jigan, Kaiju number 8, and real quick, some manhwa examples, Shotgun Boy, and then Sweet Home, although that one's a bit of a stretch, then I think you will really enjoy Insector. Creatures known as Insectors are terrorizing humanity, hunting and eating them, except for the Black Ant, the Kinslayer. An unfortunate high school student is our main character, and his body is filled to the brim with ants that escape through a hole in his neck, which he keeps covered up. In order to satiate their and his hunger, he hunts down his own kind and uses them for food instead. The ants create a suit that looks like the Black Power Ranger fused with the Berserker armor, but nonetheless, he seemingly has no moral or heroic reason at the beginning of the story, he just does this in order to survive, as if he goes too long without eating, the ants then eat him, which is an extremely painful thing to go through. This is one I plan to keep my eye on, since the growth of the main character is something I'm very interested in, as I doubt he'll stay like that for the rest of the series. Because what happens if he deals with all the Insectors? What happens to him? Will he find some sort of purpose in all of this? Reasons to live and just do something beyond surviving, as well as answers as to why people are turning into Insectors in the first place, the mystery behind the main character, and the Apex Insects, who are set up as the big bad faction. Overall, I think this is a very easy series to get into and deserves a bit more recognition. Once again, you can find all of these on the Webtoon app, and I do think they are each worth trying. If you have any that you would like me to read, comment it down below, and consider liking and subscribing as it does a lot for the channel. This has been The Masked Man, hope everyone has a blessed rest of the day, and peace.